My lazy parents found out my salary and demanded 50% of my monthly income, but when I handed them one envelope, what they found inside left them speechless. My parents found out my salary on a Tuesday and showed up at my apartment on Wednesday with a calculator. Not a card, not flowers, not a phone call saying they were proud of me. A calculator, one of those wide-body desk models with the paper roll, the kind my father used to keep on top of the refrigerator for reasons nobody ever explained. He carried it into my living room under his arm like a briefcase, set it on my coffee table, and sat down on my couch like he had paid for it. I was still wearing my work badge. 20 minutes off the train, my shoes were still on. He turned the screen toward my face. 50% is fair. My mother crossed her legs and smiled at me the way a landlord smiles at a tenant who is one day late. You make more than enough, Lena. It's time you started giving back. Giving back. I want you to understand that I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I stood in the middle of my own apartment. The first apartment I had ever rented without splitting it 4 ways, with actual plants in the window because I had reached the point in my life where I could keep something alive on purpose. And I felt something in my chest go very, very quiet because there was a drawer in my desk 8 feet behind my mother's head that I had been filling since I was 19 years old. Okay, I said. My mother's whole face changed. My father uncapped a pen and slid a document across the table toward me. One he had brought folded in his jacket pocket, one with my name already typed on the signature line. See, he said to her, I told you she'd be reasonable. I walked to the desk. I opened the top drawer. I took out an envelope. It was thick, heavier than they expected. My mother's eyes dropped to it and lit up in a way I will be thinking about for the rest of my life. I set it down in front of them, right on top of their agreement. Here's what I owe you, I said. She snatched it before he could reach. Now this, she said, is how a daughter behaves. She tore the flap open, smiling. There was not a single dollar inside, just 23 pages, and printed across the top of the first one, in 14-point bold, invoice, Denise and Robert Martin, amount owed. She made it to page 4. To explain page 4, I have to go back, not to Wednesday, not even to Tuesday when my cousin Ashley posted a photo from my work celebration and put my salary range in the caption, like it was a fun fact. I have to go back 5 weeks, to a routine email from my employer's compliance department, and then back 12 years before that. My name is Lena Martin. I was 28 years old that spring, and I had spent almost half my life being the somebody. There is a specific kind of household where nobody says the word money out loud, but every conversation is about it. Ours was that kind. My father, Robert, had a bad back that flared up whenever an application was due and vanished entirely on fishing trips. My mother, Denise, had anxiety that made job interviews impossible and made 3-hour phone calls with my Aunt Carla very possible. They were not cruel people, exactly. That's the part nobody believes. They were charming. My father could talk a stranger into a discount. My mother remembered everyone's birthday. At family cookouts, they were the loud, warm center of the table, and I was the quiet one refilling the cooler. I got my first job at 16, stocking shelves at a grocery store on Del Mar. Third shift on weekends because it paid $1 more. My father slept until noon. He was very supportive of my work ethic. At 17, I paid the electric bill for the first time, $211 in cash, at a payment center inside a check cashing storefront because the account was already past the shutoff notice and they wouldn't take a check. I remember the woman behind the glass asked if I was on the account. I said I was the daughter. She said, and took the money. At 19, I missed college orientation. Their rent was due. The landlord had started leaving notes, and I had a tuition refund check sitting in my account that I had planned to live on for the semester. I paid it. I sat on the floor of my dorm room afterward with my back against the bed frame and did the math on my phone and understood, in a very calm and very complete way, that nobody was coming to save me. That was the night I started the drawer. It wasn't a plan. I want to be honest about that because I've read stories where the narrator is a genius playing chess from chapter 1, and that was not me. I was a 19-year-old with no leverage and a stomachache. I just needed one place in the world where the truth was written down. So I printed the transfer confirmation and I put it in a folder, and then I put the next one in, and then the next. Every receipt, every wire, every screenshot of every text that began with just this once. At 22, I skipped my own graduation because my father's Silverado needed a transmission, $2,400, and the shop wanted it before they'd release the truck. My mother sent me a photo of the empty seat where I would have been. She captioned it, "We missed you, baby." At 24, I ate instant ramen for 5 weeks while my mother posted casino photos I did not know I had funded. Every single time, the same 4 words. Family helps family. They called it family. I called it survival. And for 12 years, I never said either of those things out loud because when you grow up as the load-bearing wall, you learn that the whole structure has an opinion about you moving. Then that January, I made senior analyst. I work in transaction monitoring at a regional bank. It's exactly as glamorous as it sounds. My job is to look at patterns of money moving and decide which patterns are lying. I am very good at it, which is either a coincidence or the least surprising fact in this entire story. The promotion came with health insurance that covered dental, a retirement match, and a base salary that for the first time in my life had a future attached to it instead of an emergency. I signed the offer letter in a conference room and then went into the stairwell and cried for 4 minutes and went back to my desk. I did not tell my parents, not out of strategy, out of instinct. The same instinct that makes you cover your plate at a table full full of people who've taken food off it before. 5 weeks before the calculator. The first thing that went wrong arrived as a Monday morning email from a compliance analyst named Devin. Subject line, action required. Background verification discrepancy. Senior roles at my bank require a fidelity bond, and fidelity bonds require a credit check. Mine had come back with 2 derogatory items I had never seen before. I read it 3 times at my desk with my coffee going cold. A charged-off retail card, open 2014, balance 1,840. A charged-off bank card, open 2015, last payment 2016, balance 4,106. I was in high school in 2014. Here is what I told myself, in order, over about 90 seconds. It's a mix-up with another L. Martin. It's a data error. It's an old account of mine I forgot about because who remembers everything? My hands were fine. My hands were completely fine. I noticed that I had typed my reply 4 times and deleted it 4 times. I called the bureau's dispute line on my lunch break, standing in the parking garage where the reception was bad. 40 minutes. The representative was kind and completely powerless. She told me I would need to pull my full report, identify every account I did not open, and file a police report and an FTC identity theft report before anything could be blocked. Ma'am, she said, I have to ask, do you know anyone who would have had access to your social security number as a minor? I said no. That was the first lie I told anyone in this story, and I told it to a stranger in a parking garage, and I knew it was a lie before it finished leaving my mouth 32 days before. I pulled my full report from all 3 bureaus on a Wednesday night. I made tea. I sat down at the desk with the drawer in it. There weren't 2 accounts. There were 3, plus a 4th item that made me set the tea down. The retail card, the bank card, a store card from a furniture chain, opened 2013 when I was 15, and then an auto loan, originated 2017, on a used Silverado with 2 names on it. Robert Martin, primary. Lena Martin, cosigner. I had never cosigned anything in my life. I ordered the loan documents. It took 11 days and $31 and a notarized request form. When the PDF finally landed in my inbox, I opened it in my kitchen standing up, and I scrolled to the signature page, and there it was, my name. In handwriting that was almost mine. The L was right. The loop on the A was right. Whoever wrote it had practiced. The whole kitchen went very far away for a second. I put both hands flat on the counter, which is a thing I'd only ever seen people do in movies, and I understood for the first time that I had been doing something wrong my whole life. I had been keeping receipts of what I gave. It had never once occurred to me to check what had been taken. I called my mother the next morning. This was mistake number 1, though not the worst one. I did not accuse. I asked. I said I'd found some old accounts with my name on them and I was trying to sort them out for work. She did not miss a beat, not half of one. Oh, honey, that was for your credit, my credit. You have to build credit young, everybody knows that. Your father read a whole thing about it. We were doing you a favor. A pause and then the pivot, right on schedule. And frankly, it's a little insulting to be interrogated about something we did for you. There's a truck loan, Mom, with my signature on it, from 2017. You were living at home. I was in Springfield, at school. Then you must have signed it when you visited, she said, and there was nothing in her voice at all. Not guilt, not defensiveness. Just the flat certainty of someone reading a weather report. You don't remember every piece of paper you've ever signed, Lena. Nobody does. I hung up and sat in my car in the parking lot of my own building for 20 minutes without turning it off. 26 days before. So I went back to the drawer. 12 years of it. 4 accordion folders and a shoebox. I did what I do for a living, except on my kitchen floor with a legal pad and my personal laptop, because I want to be extremely clear about something. I did not use a single work system, not one query, not one lookup. What I know about how money moves, I know from my job. What I used was annualcreditreport.com, my own bank statement archive, my own text history, and the paper I'd been hoarding since I was 19. Anything else would have ended my career, and my parents had already taken enough. It took me 6 nights. The total I had transferred to Robert and Denise Martin between the ages of 16 and 28, documented, receipted, and reconciled twice. $86,340. I sat with that number for a long time, but it wasn't the number that changed everything. It was the memo lines. Because when you pay someone's rent for a decade, you keep the confirmations, and the confirmations have dates. And when you line up the dates against the reasons, the emergency reasons, the just this once reasons, a second picture develops underneath the first one like a photograph in a tray. March 2021, I sent $1,800 for a past due rent notice. Their landlord's ledger, which I had a copy of because I'd requested it once to make sure a payment cleared, showed the account current that entire quarter. June 2022, $2,400 for dad's medication. 2 days later, my mother posted a photo of a pontoon boat with the caption, finally. And then, starting a little over 2 years back and running straight through to that month, a recurring $900 leaving their account on the first of every month to a payee labeled only R. Martin, care. I stared at that one for probably 10 minutes. Because my father is R. Martin, and so is his mother, 19 days before. My grandmother's name is Ruth Martin. She was 81 that spring. She taught 4th grade for 34 years. She has a laugh like a screen door, and she has lived in the same brick ranch on Holloway Street since 1979. She paid it off in 1994 and framed the last statement and hung it in the hallway by the coat closet, which I always thought was the most badass thing anyone in my family had ever done. I hadn't seen her in 4 months. That's on me. My mother had spent 2 years tears telling me Grandma Ruth was tired, that visits wore her out, that they had it handled. I drove over on a Sunday with a rotisserie chicken and a container of the potato salad she likes. She was thrilled to see me. She was also wearing a cardigan in 70-degree weather, and there were 3 months of unopened mail on the dining room table, sorted into a pile the way you sort things you have stopped being able to read. Her refrigerator had condiments, half a loaf of bread, and a carton of milk 11 days past date. I kept my voice normal. I asked her about groceries. "Oh, Robert handles all that now," she said, patting my hand. "He does the whole thing, the bills, the shopping. It's such a relief." "You get to a point, sweetheart. How much do you give him for it?" "I don't know the numbers anymore." She said it lightly, almost proudly, the way you'd say you'd stopped watching the news. "That's the whole point of having someone." I washed her dishes. I made her a plate. And then I asked if she wanted help going through the mail, and she said yes. And that is how I ended up sitting at my grandmother's dining room table with her credit union statements in my hands. 26 months. Withdrawals and transfers averaging $2,300 a month on top of the $900 care payment. Cash withdrawals in $500 increments at an ATM I recognized from my mother's casino photos. A new line of credit against the house, opened 14 months prior, drawn down to $38,000. And underneath the statements, in a manila folder with a rubber band around it, 2 documents. The first was a durable power of attorney, signed by Ruth Martin, notarized, dated 3 months earlier. It named Robert Martin as her agent for all financial matters. The second was a home equity conversion mortgage application, a reverse mortgage, filled out in my father's handwriting, unsigned. My grandmother watched me read them and said with total serenity, "Robert says the house can pay for itself now. Isn't that clever?" My ears were ringing. I remember that specifically. A high, thin ringing, like after a concert. I asked her one question. I asked if she remembered signing the first one. She thought about it for a while, long enough that I started counting the flowers on the tablecloth. "There was a man who came," she said finally, "with a stamp. Robert was there. It was about the taxes, I think." She looked at me and her face did something I had never seen it do before. It flickered, and she got scared, and she covered it with a smile. "Was it not about the taxes?" I said it was probably about the taxes. I photographed every page in her dining room with my phone, 22 shots, time-stamped, and I put everything back under the rubber band exactly the way I found it. Then I drove home and did not remember driving home. I called Aunt Carla that night. Mistake number 2, and this one had teeth. Carla is my mother's sister. She is not a bad person. She is a person who believes the worst thing that can happen to a family is a scene. I told her Grandma Ruth's refrigerator was empty. I told her I had questions about the money. I did not mention the reverse mortgage. She was quiet for a second, and then she said, "Lena, honey, you do not want to start something you can't finish." 4 days later, my cousin Ashley posted my salary in a caption. I don't think Ashley knew what she was doing. I think my mother asked her a friendly question at a family dinner, and Ashley answered it, because Ashley is 23 and posts everything. But I know for a fact that Carla called Denise the night I called Carla, and I know that after 12 years of taking whatever I offered, my parents drove to my apartment with a pre-drafted agreement exactly 6 days after I started asking questions. They weren't cashing in on a promotion. They were building a fence 16 days before. Marisol Ocampo has an office above a dry cleaner and 19 years of practice in elder law and financial exploitation. Her consultation fee was $200 for 90 minutes. She spent the first 40 of them not saying a word, just reading, with a yellow legal pad she never wrote on. Then she squared the papers, took her glasses off, and gave me the 2 hours of my life I think about the most. "I want to give you vocabulary," she said, "because right now you have a feeling, and a feeling can't be filed." She laid it out flat. The accounts opened in my name as a minor, identity theft, and because the perpetrators were family members, a category with its own name, familial identity theft, which is the most underreported financial crime in the country, because the victims are children who love the people who did it. The auto loan signature, forgery. The pattern with my grandmother, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The durable power of attorney was the mechanism, and its validity turned on one question: whether Ruth Martin had capacity on the day she signed it, and whether she signed it under undue influence. Undue influence isn't a feeling either, Ocampo said. It has elements: isolation of the victim, dependency created by the exploiter, rushed timing, secrecy, documents the victim can't explain. She counted them off on her fingers, and every finger landed on something I had seen with my own eyes in that dining room. "Your grandmother told you the notary appointment was about taxes. That's not a bad memory. That's an element." I asked her what happened next. "Next," she said, "is that you don't do anything." I must have made a face. "Listen to me." She leaned forward. "You have 2 categories of harm here, yours and hers. Yours is money and a credit file, and it's real and it's fixable and it is not urgent. Hers is a house. That equity line is at $38,000. A HECM on a paid-off property at her age could pull $150. Once that closes, that money is gone into a casino floor and a boat slip, and there is nothing on this earth that gets it back. So we stop it. We build it," she said. "We get a capacity opinion from her physician. We get a forensic accountant to reconcile 26 months. We make an APS report with documentation instead of a phone call. Then we go to court with a petition a judge can sign in 10 minutes instead of a story he has to sit through." She held my eyes. "Which means until we're ready, they cannot know you're looking looking. The day they know, they accelerate. They always accelerate. Every single time in 19 years. I told her I understood. I want that on the record, she told me. She told me clearly. She told me twice, and I said the words I understand. And 11 days later, my father put a calculator on my coffee table, and I set fire to the whole plan because I could not stand there and be robbed politely one more time. Wednesday, 6:41 p.m. So now you know what was in my chest when he said 50% is fair. I stood in my living room. My mother had her legs crossed. My father tapped the calculator with one knuckle, twice, the way he used to tap the table when I was slow doing homework. We raised you, he said. That investment needs to return something. I laughed. I did not plan to. It got out. Her eyes went thin. Don't be disrespectful. You want half my income. We need stability, my father said. You need jobs. The room went silent. My mother stood up like a woman about to give a speech at a funeral. I looked at her hands. Fresh gel nails, done 2 weeks earlier, with $400 she had borrowed from me for an emergency. After everything we sacrificed, what did you sacrifice? Our whole lives, she said. You have no idea what raising a child costs. I do, actually, I said. I have the bank statements. My father's face changed, not into anger, into attention. That was worse. Careful, he said. Then he took the folded document out of his jacket and smoothed it flat on my coffee table like a man selling siding. We already drafted a family support agreement. Sign it tonight and we won't make this ugly. My phone buzzed on the counter. The family group chat. My mother had posted in it an hour before she came over, which meant she had written it before she knew what I would say. Big family news tonight. So proud of our girl. Aunt Carla, 12 seconds later. God bless you, Lena. So happy to see you finally stepping up. 12 years of paying their bills in silence, and I was the one finally stepping up. Everyone already knows, my mother said, watching me read it. So don't embarrass us. Embarrass. That was the word she chose, out of all of them. And I heard Marisol Ocampo very clearly in my head saying they cannot know you're looking, and I looked at the envelope drawer, and I made a choice that cost me the next 9 days of my life. Okay, I said. You know the rest of that part. The envelope. Her hands tearing at it. Now this is how a daughter behaves. Page 1 was the invoice. 12 years, itemized by date and amount, with the source document for each line referenced in the right-hand column. Rent, $31,180. Utilities, $9,144. Vehicle repairs, $7,190. Cash transfers labeled emergency, $18,730. Groceries, insurance, a funeral I paid for, a vacation deposit I never took. Total, $86,140. Page 2 was a summary of that total against their reported household income for the same period. Page 3 was a screenshot log. 41 texts beginning with the words "just this once" in chronological order, with dates. Page 4 was my credit report with 4 accounts circled in red pen, and beneath it, the signature page of a 2017 auto loan. And beneath that, my actual signature from my apartment lease. And beneath that, a line I had typed myself. These are not the same. My mother stopped at page 4. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. Her mouth opened slightly and stayed that way, and the pages went loose in her hands. And for the first time in my entire life, I watched my mother be unable to locate the next sentence. My father took it from her. He went through the rest fast, licking his thumb, the way you go through a bill you're disputing. Pages 5 through 22 were my grandmother's credit union statements, 26 months of them, with a highlighted column. Page 23 was 1 paragraph and 1 line. The above balance is not a demand. It is a record. Amount due, 0.I0. This account is closed. He looked up at me. I've thought a lot about what I expected. Shame, maybe. A door slam. Something loud enough to be over. Instead, my father folded the pages in half, tucked them under his arm along with his calculator, and stood up. He was completely calm. He looked around my apartment, at the plants, at the couch, at the badge still clipped to my shirt, the way a man looks at a room he's decided he's finished with. You went in her house, he said. Not how dare you. Not this is a misunderstanding. You went in her house. My mother said my name once from the doorway. Just my name, with a question mark on it, like she was checking whether I was still somewhere in there. Then they left, and I locked the door, and I slid down it, and I called Marisol Ocampo's after-hours line, and left a message that I'm told was 2 minutes and 11 seconds long, and mostly the word sorry. She called me back at 8:15 the next morning. She did not yell. That was somehow worse. Okay, she said. We're on a clock now. I don't know how long the clock is. The clock, it turned out, was 25 hours. What followed was the strangest week of my life, in which I learned that the system that protects people like my grandmother is real. It is staffed by extremely competent professionals, and it is built almost entirely for a speed that is slower than a bad actor with a car. Gregory Hahn, CPA, CFF, 26 years forensic accounting, Ocampo's regular expert. He took my 22 dining room photographs and my reconciliation and told me my legal pad math was, quote, annoyingly close. His engagement letter said 14 business days. He did it in 6, and I have never been so grateful to a man in a golf shirt in my life. His final figure for what left Ruth Martin's accounts and did not come back, $61,412 across 26 months, of which $58,900 had no corresponding household expense of any kind. Detective Ramona Vasquez, 16 years on the force, 11 in financial crimes. She was the one who doubted me, not cruelly, professionally. She sat across a small table and said the sentence I now know every family financial abuse victim hears at least once. Ma'am, I have to tell you upfront, silent, most of what you're describing sounds like a civil matter. She explained that adult children moving a parent's money around is legal when the parent consents, that power of attorney is a real legal instrument, that she seemed confused is not evidence. Then I gave her the loan signature comparison, and the timeline, and Han's preliminary summary, and she went quiet, and she pulled a form out of her drawer and said, "Okay, let's talk about chain of custody, because if this goes anywhere, I need to be able to say exactly where every one of these pages came from and who touched it." Teresa Nwachukwu, Adult Protective Services, 14 years. My first APS call, the one I made before I ever saw Ocampo, had gone into an intake queue with a stated response window of 10 business days. 10 business days. I remember thanking the intake worker and then sitting in my car doing the arithmetic of how much can be signed away in 10 business days. Dr. Alan Whitmore, geriatrics, 31 years, who had been my grandmother's physician since her hip. He could not tell me anything. HIPAA is not a suggestion. But once Ocampo got a signed release from Ruth herself, a release Ruth gave freely, sitting up in her own chair, in her own house, after being asked in plain language whether she wanted her granddaughter to be able to talk to her doctor, Whitmore's chart produced the most important 2 pages in this entire story. A cognitive screening administered 11 months earlier. Score, 19 out of 30. Documented moderate impairment with a note about short-term recall and susceptibility to suggestion. 8 months before she signed a durable power of attorney about the taxes. Thursday, 7:52 p.m. 25 hours. My grandmother called me. She never calls at night. "Sweetheart, are you coming tomorrow?" Robert said there'd be a lot of people. I made my voice sound like a normal person's voice. "A lot of people, Grandma? The man with the stamp is coming back. 10 o'clock. And Robert and Denise, and I think somebody from the bank on the telephone." A pause. "He said we should get it done before anybody makes a fuss." I said that sounded fine. I said I loved her. I hung up and stood in my kitchen, and my hands would not work well enough to unlock the phone on the first try. Then everything failed at once, in about 40 minutes, in the following order. Ocampo was in trial in the next county over and unreachable until morning. Her paralegal, Danny, told me an emergency ex parte petition for temporary conservatorship could absolutely be filed. At 8:30 a.m., when the clerk's office opened, and the presiding judge that Friday had a full criminal calendar until 11. The notary was coming at 10. Detective Vasquez picked up on her cell and was honest with me, which I appreciated then and appreciate more now. She could not stop a private citizen from signing a document in her own home. There was no warrant, no order, no arrest. "If she signs it, it becomes evidence," she said. "That's not nothing, but I can't stand in the doorway." The credit union's elder fraud reporting line closed at 5 p.m. And APS. I called APS at 8:40 at night, fully expecting a recording. A woman answered on the 4th ring. "I want to tell you what actually changed the outcome, because it wasn't courage and it wasn't cleverness. It was 6 words that I only knew to say because Marisol Ocampo had told me 16 days earlier exactly what makes a report jump a queue. There is a scheduled financial transaction tomorrow morning." Everything on the other end of the line changed. The intake worker's typing changed rhythm. She asked me for the time. She asked me for the address. She asked whether there was a specific instrument to be executed, and I said a home equity conversion mortgage and a possible amendment to a power of attorney, and she said, "Hold, please." And I held for 9 minutes listening to a hold tone at 8:51 at night with my forehead against my refrigerator door. Teresa Nwachukwu called me back at 9:22 p.m. "I've got your file open," she said. "Talk fast." I talked for 11 minutes. When I stopped, she said the words "imminent and irreversible financial loss" out loud, in a tone that told me she was writing them down, and then she said she would be at that address before 10 a.m., and that she'd be requesting a deputy for a welfare accompaniment, and that I was not to be there. "You need to understand why," she said. "If you're in that house, your father's lawyer gets to say the whole thing was a granddaughter, with a grudge trying to control an old lady's money, which is the exact same accusation you're making about him. Don't hand it to him." I did not sleep. I did the thing where you close your eyes for 90 minutes, and then it's 2:47 a.m., and you're looking at your ceiling doing the arithmetic on $150,000. Friday, I parked on Holloway Street at 9:15 a.m., 3 houses down and across, facing the wrong way, which I want to note is a parking violation, and I did not care. I sat in my Honda Civic, and I watched my grandmother's house. 9:31. My father's Silverado, the one with my forged signature on the title loan, pulled into the driveway. My mother got out of the passenger side carrying a bakery box. A bakery box. She had brought pastries. 9:44. A county car and a marked unit. Teresa Nwachukwu is shorter than I expected, and walks like a person who has done this 1,100 times. She had a folder under her arm. She knocked. My father opened the door, and I watched his posture change from the driveway of a house I used to eat Thanksgiving in. 10:02. A silver Corolla parked at the curb. A woman got out with a rolling case and a stamp in her hand. Beverly Sands, mobile notary, 12 years commissioned, and I learned later that a notary's job is not to be a rubber stamp. A notary has an independent duty to determine that a signer understands the document and is acting willingly, and to refuse the act if they can't. She was in the house for 6 minutes. Then she came out, put the case in her trunk, sat in her car for a while making notes, and drove away without notarizing anything. They were in there for 2 hours and 11 minutes. I know because I sat there for all of it, and my legs went numb. yum, and at one point I ate a granola bar I found in the glove compartment out of pure animal need to be doing something with my hands. At 12:07, my father came out onto the porch and stood there and looked down the street. I don't know if he saw the car. I've decided it doesn't matter. Here's what the record shows, and the record is the only part of this I trust. Nwachukwu's emergency response produced a same-day finding of suspected financial exploitation and a hold request to the credit union, which froze the equity line by Monday. Ocampo filed the ex parte petition Monday morning with Han's preliminary reconciliation, Dr. Whitmore's cognitive screening, and Nwachukwu's field report attached as Exhibits C, D, and F. Temporary conservatorship granted Tuesday 11 minutes of hearing time, exactly like she said. A licensed professional fiduciary named Patricia Lund took over Ruth Martin's finances that afternoon. The reverse mortgage application never went to underwriting. The lender's file was closed with a notation about a pending capacity dispute, which I am told is a phrase that makes mortgage lenders leave a room quickly. Detective Vasquez's case went to the county's elder abuse unit in June. My father was charged with 1 count of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult and 1 count of forgery. My mother was charged with theft by deception. Nobody went to prison. I need to say that plainly, because if you're reading this hoping for a sentencing hearing where somebody gets dragged out in cuffs, I don't have one for you. My father pleaded to the exploitation count in November, 36 months of felony probation, 200 hours of community service, a restitution order for $61,412, joint and several, a permanent bar on serving as anyone's fiduciary, agent, or representative payee, a no-contact provision covering Ruth Martin's finances, though not Ruth Martin. She asked the judge for that, and she got it, because she is 82 and she is allowed to want her son to be able to call her. My mother pleaded to a misdemeanor, 24 months probation, 100 hours of service, joint restitution. The 4 accounts opened in my name were blocked under the identity theft provisions of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, 11 weeks after I filed the FTC report and the police report. The charge-offs came off my file. I got the fidelity bond. Devin from compliance sent me a 2-line email that said, "All clear, thanks for your patience," and I read it about 9 times. And the family group chat, the one with the "so proud of our girl," went quiet. Not dramatically. Nobody was exposed at a wedding. Nobody made a speech. Aunt Carla called me in August. She had read the exhibit list. She cried for 11 minutes, and I let her. And at the end she said, "I didn't know." And I said, "I know you didn't." And neither of us said the second half of that sentence, which is that not knowing was a thing she worked at. Ashley deleted the post and sent me a paragraph I didn't answer for 4 days, and then answered kindly, because she was 23 and she was the only person in that family who was ever actually just careless. 14 months later. My grandmother lives at a place called Larkin House now. She picked it herself from 3 that Patricia Lund brought her on a Tuesday, sitting up at her own kitchen table with a pen and a list of questions she'd written out in 4th grade teacher handwriting. The house on Holloway is rented out. The income covers her care with a little left over. The framed mortgage statement from 1994 hangs in her new hallway by her new coat closet because I took it off the wall myself and drove it over and hung it at the height she asked for, which was 2 inches lower than I would have picked. I go Sundays. We play gin rummy and she beats me roughly 70% of the time, which Gregory Hahn would tell you is statistically significant. She doesn't remember Friday. She remembers, "A nice lady from the county came about the taxes." I have decided that this is fine. I have decided that a lot of things are fine now that were not fine before, which is most of what 14 months and a very good therapist will get you. The restitution comes in at $180 a month, against $61,412. That's 28 years. My father will be 91. I ran the amortization once at my kitchen table, out of professional habit, and then I closed the laptop and went for a walk, because there is a specific kind of person who does that math, and I am trying not to be her anymore. I never collected on the invoice, not $1 of the $86,000. It was never a demand. I meant that line I typed on page 23, even when I was too angry to know I meant it. I didn't need the money back. I needed one document to exist in the world in which the number was written down, and someone who owed it had to look at it. They looked at it. My mother made it to page 4. My father left the calculator on my coffee table that night, just walked out with the pages under one arm and left it sitting there, screen still showing the number he'd typed, half of what I earned, the figure he'd worked out on the drive over. I never gave it back. He never asked. It's in a box in my closet now, on top of a sealed envelope I never mailed. 12 years, 4 accordion folders, and a shoebox. And the only thing my parents ever actually left me was a little machine for counting up what other people owe.